I just want to start off by thanking the mayors and Tish. Been here for about a year, and just thank them for giving us all the resources we needed throughout the off season since the day we got here to build the best team we could. Last season, along with any type of resources we needed. Would also like to thank everybody, that works under this roof that contributed to not only the culture but their particular job responsibilities throughout the season. There's tremendous energy in the building right now, really good culture, and I'm just really happy with everybody's efforts throughout the year, and want to thank them for their efforts. So, with that being said, again, I would say it was a good season for us, many different ways. When you come in, when I did in January, you're trying to get to know the roster, trying to get to know the players. Dave's had a very good plan in terms of the off season, the OTAs, to bring the players together and, again, start to develop that culture and camaraderie amongst the team. And I thought that carried over to our fast start early in the season. The start we got off to was good. I think some of the positives were some young players got to experience success that maybe they haven't in the past, and how you handle that. And then we had a little bit of a lull, I would say, after the bye week, and also allowed some of our young players to learn how to overcome adversity and steady the ship. And we did that down the road, and we were able to win a playoff game, and a lot of young players were able to get playoff experience. So all in all, I think a lot of those lessons learned throughout the season will hopefully continue to help us moving forward. The foundation has been set, and again, I think some of those experiences that the players were able to go through this year will just allow us to build moving forward. So with that being said, I'll open up to questions.
Joe, do you plan on re-signing Danny?
We'd like Daniel to be here. Again, he said it yesterday. There's a business side to it, but we feel like Daniel played well this season. He's done everything that we asked him to do, and again, there's a business side to it. We haven't went down that road yet. We still got to have our meetings with our staff late in the week, and we'll devise an off-season plan. But we haven't had those meetings yet, but we would like to have Daniel Jones back.
Joe, having said that, when did you know? I mean, you and Dave's came in and had to do your due diligence and see what you had in Daniel and everybody else. When did you make the decision, both of you guys, this guy is our guy to move forward with?
Yeah, I don't know if there was necessarily an aha moment or anything like that. We've just continued to evaluate him throughout the season, and what the coaches were asking him to do, and he was executing the game plans. And Dave's and I communicate on a daily basis. Not just Dave's and I, but the offensive staff and what they're asking him to do. And he continued to prove out throughout the season. So I don't know the exact date or time when we're like Daniel's our guy, but we're pleased with how we played this season.
Joe, obviously your other big contract is Saquon. Is that somebody also you would like to keep, and is the franchise tag a possibility with you?
Yeah, again, this is a special team. To me, it was my first year. We'd like to have all the guys back. I really would, but there's a business side to it, and there's rules that you need to operate under in terms of the salary cap. And Saquon's, he's a good player. He's a great teammate. I love getting to know him this season, and he's a guy we would like to have back. It's just, again, we haven't had our end of season meetings yet. We're less than 48 hours after that game, so everybody's going to step back, take the emotion out of it, evaluate the roster. And then again, we got to operate under a salary cap. How are you going to divvy up? How we're going to create the roster? What are the priority positions, and how we're going to move forward? But we would like to have Saquon back if it works out.
Joe, do you think you overachieved as a ball club, and do you think having sustained success is really what you're going for most of all here? And is there a possibility that a team, if they did overachieve, could take a step backwards along the way to getting where you want to go?
Well, that's a good question. I wouldn't say we overachieved. I think Dave's did a good job along with his staff of focus on the process, not necessarily the results. And they came in on a weekly basis and focused on the process, and then they saw the dividends came on Sunday. So I think there was a lot of good football players on our team. I think there was a lot of good teammates. Maybe we weren't the most talented, but we did have a good team, and guys cared about each other. The culture was good. And the process was that we had in place. Again, I think the dividends showed on Sundays.
Joe,
how do you see the draft?
when you say you want Daniel back, ideally, would you like that to be a long-term deal or a multi-year deal?
Yeah, we're going to get into all that. Again, it takes two, both sides got to have those conversations. We haven't crossed that bridge yet. So there's tools at our disposal. Again, we'll go through several scenarios. It's kind of like I mentioned it last year, and maybe it was at the combine, but the if-then scenarios, you got to go through all those because you don't know, how things are going to fall because it's negotiating. This is why you love the draft. You turn in the card, they're yours. You know what the contract structure is. You know the years. This is where there's two parties involved, and it's going to be time consuming, but we'll get together as a staff. We'll talk through the different options and have those discussions when it's appropriate.
When do you plan to start those negotiations with agents about an extension? Is there any urgency to get it done before that tag deadline to try and lock one of those guys in?
Yeah, we haven't discussed that yet. So again, we're gonna meet as a staff on Thursday. We got All-Star games coming up. The last couple of days have been a lot of we did exit meetings yesterday with the entire football team, each player individually, working on calendars, as we move forward the next couple of weeks, so we mirror personnel calendar with the coaches, and we'll have those meetings on Thursday, and those will continue through the weekend.
Joe, with Saquon, how do you view running back positional value versus he's also, other than Daniel, your best playmaker?
Listen, Saquon's done everything we've asked him to do, and he's a good football player. Again, the positional value, we'll get into how we want to build this team and allocate our resources, and that's what it comes down to. So, again, he's a good football player. He was durable for this year. He played well, and again, he's a guy that we'd like to have back.
How do you view your cap, Joe? In terms of the cap, would you like to do something to lower Leonard Williams' cap number?
We haven't discussed that yet. I like his quote yesterday. I just saw that before I came down here, that he'd be interested in taking a pay cut. You guys did a good job on that. Whoever asked him that. He didn't mention that in the exit interview with us, but.
You redid the deal, and the numbers are really high. So it's not like you have no cap space, but what's your comfort level with a number that high, just in general?
Yeah, we'll talk about that again. Like, there's several options that we got to go through the entire roster. We have a lot of UFAs. We have guys that, are good players that have, contracts on the horizon. So that's all part of the planning that we'll go through. And again, we just got to, talk about how we want to divvy it up and prioritize different areas. And if we need to open up money, we won't rule that out.
Brian, I have a couple for you. Joe just said we may not have been the most talented, but we were a team, right? Do you now look ahead after your first year and think, okay, now we are one of the more talented teams, we can do a lot more with this?
You know me, I take it day by day. I think it's year by year. Every team is different. Just because you won one year doesn't guarantee you anything the next year relative to what players you have, what players you don't have. I mean, you take a look at the 2000 and last year's playoffs, I think 7 of them didn't make the playoffs the following year. The 2 top seeds had losing records. So I think what our goal will always be just get better each day, try to put the best team we can together, work at it each day, not to get too far ahead of ourselves. I appreciate, like Joe said, all the people that had a hand in this year. Obviously didn't end up where we wanted to end up, but it took a lot of work, it took a lot of energy, it took a lot of people in all areas of our building. So that's, off-season starts, started the day after, we lost, unfortunately, but that's where we're at, and do the best job we can of building up our team the best way we can, our organization, and then going out there and taking it day by day.
And Joe said that, he wants Daniel back. Obviously, you guys have talked about this a lot. Why do you want Daniel back, and why do you think he can take this team, get another trophy with this, if you do think he can?
Yeah, I've said it all year. He's done everything that we've asked him to do as an offensive staff, and he's done a really good job with operating and executing our offense. I think he's made strides in a lot of different areas. Certainly, we can all make strides in more, but he's been a good leader for us. He's played the quarterback position well for us, and I'm happy we had him.
Joe, how much does it change? Joe, how much does it change everything in regards to team building that you have a quarterback, and assuming you're able to resign him, and you don't have to then at that point go find a quarterback, go draft a quarterback, use those resources elsewhere?
Yeah, I don't think it really changes. I mean, it doesn't really change what we're going to do. We still got to draft well. We want to be in good cap health. We're in a unique situation that we have some players that are upcoming, that were drafted here previously before we came here that played well. So again, it just comes down to, how we want to divvy it up, again, the money and the resources that we have, along with the draft, again, we're still trying to build this thing so we can sustain it. And again, I
But
think,
in Buffalo, you had to trade up and up to get Josh, right? So you had to put a lot of.
yeah, every
resources in to
situation's
go after
different.
it.
I know you want to make the parallels with here in Buffalo. We made the playoffs the first year. I mean, every situation's unique and different, and, there were different factors that played into that. And, again, I think Daniel played well enough this year. We'd like to have him back, and, again, we have some difficult off-season decisions to make, and how we're going to go about those. So I look forward to getting to work on that here, by the end of the week.
Joe, on Saquon, when you try to determine his financial value, how much do you factor in character and contribution to culture as opposed to talent when it comes to that evaluation?
Yeah, I mean, if that wasn't important, we probably wouldn't be approaching him. So that's kind of a starter for us. If you're a good teammate, you're a culture fit for how we want to do things, that's where we go to those players. But then we don't factor in it, when you're making comps, like, it's hard to put a value on that. I mean, that's important, but you can look at how many yards, touchdowns, Pro Bowls, games played, games missed. Those are more, markers that we can establish value on. But we wouldn't approach him or look to sign a guy if they didn't fit our culture, if we didn't think so.
How close were you with him? How close were you with him? Did you consider you guys close when you guys had the discussions
Productive
previously?
conversations, and it just, we were off on the value, and, again, we said we would circle back up at the end of the season and continue those conversations, but, that time of year, we weren't really that close, I didn't think.
Joe, when you talk about you have to make decisions about allocating resources, does it give you any pause that you see these big second contracts for running backs kind of haven't panned out generally across the league?
Yeah, I wouldn't say all of them haven't panned out, but yeah, I mean, there's a risk to any, big contract. I mean, anybody can go out there and get hurt at any position. So I think that's the risk reward. The good thing about, I feel extending people in-house, their work ethic, their durability, their injury history, how they train, how they practice. So in terms of eliminating some of the margin for error, it's a known commodity.
Joe, you were pretty up what a team can do when they bring in a top flight wide receiver. You guys did that with Diggs in Buffalo, Jalen Hurts with A.J. Brown. If Daniel Jones is a quarterback, whoever's under center, how much of a priority is it to get a wide receiver that you can pair to continue that evolution?
Yeah, I think we want to continue to build the entire team. Again, I know, a number one wide receiver can be important, but there's some number one wide receivers that are home right now. I mean, you can go through this past weekend, you can go through a couple weekends ago in the playoffs. Like, a number one receiver doesn't guarantee you anything. I think it's important that we continue to build the team, and there's multiple positions where we want to upgrade throughout the offseason. So, yeah, I'd love to have a number one wide receiver, but, we got to place value on everything we do, and if it makes sense, that's something we'll look to do.
What were your biggest weaknesses? What do you think your weaknesses are?
Yeah, we're going to go through that with the coaches. Again, we're going to talk through all that. We're going to step back, take the emotion out of it, evaluate the roster, and again, we'll come up with how we want to approach the offseason and where we need to improve.
Just for Brian or Joe, or both, what do you make of your rookie class, your first draft, and just your entire rookie class? What do you think about it? And I mean, was it what you wanted it to be?
Yeah, I mean, I like the guys we brought in. I think, there's some ups and downs, which you're always going to have with rookie classes. I think Kayvon, he got injured in that Cincinnati game in the preseason, and then, kind of got healthy throughout the season and hit his stride. Evan, same deal, had some ups and downs and, battled through injury. Wandell was really coming along. He had, over 100 yards through 3 quarters in the Detroit game. So, he'd have been a big-time contributor, especially down the stretch if he'd have stayed healthy. So, again, a lot of contributions without going through, Flott made some big plays, made a big play in the Minnesota game. Has a high ceiling. We're excited about him. Azudu started some games and then got injured. I guess, when these guys get healthy, again, next year, I think, again, that's going to provide depth, and some of those guys are going to compete for starting spots. Bellinger, we thought, had a really good season. Again, he got injured. I think they all got injured except McFadden at some point, unfortunately. But Dane Belton, same deal. I mean, when he was out there, he played well, had 2 interceptions for us. DJ Davidson, unfortunately, had an ACL in London, but was a contributor in a rotational role. Beavers in the preseason, he was competing to start at Mike. Excited to see him when he comes back. And then Marcus McKeithen was having a really good camp for us before tearing his ACL. So when healthy, I think there's going to be some really good contributors out of the class this far. And then some other guys that'll be really good depth players for us. But smart, tough, dependable players that we're happy we have.
Joe, has Dexter Lawrence done enough to earn a second contract?
Who?
Dexter Lawrence. Has he done enough to earn a second contract? Should you pay him this offseason?
Yeah, I would say Dexter's done enough to. Again, we want all of our guys back. We want them to be here for a long time. Dexter played well, and we got him under the 5th-year option, and that'll be part of our end of season review in terms of how we want to approach that. But yeah, Dexter played really well. Great person, great teammate. Happy he's here.
You'll sit down and talk with him, I presume, Joe? I mean, you have him under contract, but I presume you'll sit down and talk with him about a deal, right?
If you presume.
I mean,
I don't know. We're going to talk about it here in the future, and then again, it goes back to we have the certain cap space, and we have certain tools at our disposal, and we'll figure out how we want to utilize them.
Joe, now that you have that cap space, now that you are a little bit more financially healthy, or significantly more financially healthy than you were last year, do you plan on being aggressive in the free agent market? Is that somewhere where you're going to now look to really infuse this roster with talent that way?
Yeah, again, it's going to, based on our own, I mean, we got some guys that are good players that are currently UFAs that we need to, again, these are known commodities in-house that we know intimately from being with them for a year, and, we'll see who we want to bring back throughout these meetings and, what their market value is going to be based on our analysis. And, again, if we can bring some of our own back, we will, mix with guys outside the building, we'll look at that. But, ideally, to me, the known commodities that are good football players that that's going to be our priority first, and then we'll look outside the building if we need to supplement the roster.
Joe, in some ways, is taking that next step a bigger challenge for a football team, i.e. going from a playoff team to a true contender? Is that a bigger step in some ways?
You're saying from
from taking a team from where you were, a difficult situation, and making the playoffs, is it harder to go from the next step, from being a playoff team to truly contending for a title?
Yeah, I think what Dave said, each year is different. Each team's different. The players that we lose, the players that we bring in, we'll just, again, we like our process, whether it's free agency, draft, waiver wire, in terms of improving the roster, we're always going to look to do that. And, I think I got a lot of confidence in our coaching staff and the personnel staff that we'll continue to, improve the roster any way we can. And, again, every season's different, so.
Joe, do you think ownership still has patience for a long-term build and process, or do you think your success this year may have accelerated expectations from the ownerships?
Yeah, we haven't really talked specifically about that. I'm in constant communication with John, Chris, Steve, about what we're thinking and what the plan is and where we are, and that hasn't come up.
Brian, you
Joe,
Brian,
was
you
it
called
challenging at all
the,
during this year? Sorry, Bruce. Was it challenging at all this year for you that you had your plan set, and similar to what Pat said, if ownership wanted it accelerated, did you have to kind of hold firm on some of the things that you believed in and not accelerate the plan based on what you were seeing maybe in the standings, record-wise, or even on the field?
Yeah, I think it goes back to, almost my opening press conference was, we wanted to see progress. The question was, what's a successful season? We wanted to see progress. And, I think you saw that throughout the season. And, again, credit to my personnel staff. They were relentless in terms of, beating up the waiver wire and, waiver claims and practice squad, and did a really good job. But, again, to your point, we had to honestly evaluate the roster, whether it was the trade deadline or not. And, I don't believe in the, you're one player away. I think it's truly a team game. And, that's where we were and the holes that we had. I thought it was best just to stay pat where we were, and again, we have 9 picks going into next year's draft. We do have a little bit more financial flexibility, and I just, as a group, we thought that was the best thing to do.
Brian, you called the loss to the Eagles a crash landing. How do you balance the success of the regular season with the disappointment of that playoff game in evaluating the entire season?
I think you just take a step back. You give the coaches some time to evaluate the players, and then we'll have time to evaluate the things that we've done, whether that's scheme, personnel, decisions. You just take a step back. Unfortunately, I've been involved in 8 playoff losses, so 24 wins, and each year is different. Each year is a different year. It's different than it was 30 years ago. Each year is, you come in here, in April 17th for the off-season program, and when you ask the new guys to stand up, it'd be dang near half the room. So, you know, what we've tried to build is our foundation, how we meet, how we practice, how we prepare, how we travel, our mindset going into games, and you have, you know, guys that have been on the roster or on the roster that are coming back that can help facilitate that with the new players that are coming in, because every year is a new year. The team we had this year, it'll be different next year, and that's just the NFL. So how you build the chemistry with the team is important. It starts, you know, it starts in April. So it's a, you know, you're glad you have some of the players that you're going to have coming back, but certainly you're going to have a lot of new players, whether that's draft picks, free agent, different guys, and, you know, everybody's got to, you know, come together again and start building, you know, the team for the next season.
Do you anticipate any changes to your coaching staff? And kind of part two to that, have you had to at least prepare for the potential of replacing a coordinator if they, you know, if they get a head job?
Yeah, like I've said all season, I have a lot of confidence in our guys. They've done a great job, and women on our staff. You know, when you have these interviews that come up, and I've been part of them the last 3 seasons, you always have to have a plan because you never know what's going to happen. If Wink gets a job, if Kaka gets a job, so then you have to go through the whole process. The good thing about, you know, being here for the second year is you have a lot of people in place that, again, go back to what I said about the players, kind of know how we do things. So as I'm sitting up there with LY and going through calendars and OTA practices and when the off season starts and self-scout, and, you know, we do a lot of things. Last year was the first time we all did it together. This will be the second time, so a little bit more smooth.
Joe, do you think there's a big gap between the Giants and the 2 teams that remain standing in that NFC?
Yeah, I mean, I know Philly more intimately, and yeah, I would say yes. Yeah, there's a talent gap there that we need to close, and that's, to me, it's the NFC East. I mean, we're 1-5-1 against the NFC East, and if you win the division, the rest takes care of itself. So that's always going to be a goal of ours, you know, to close that gap and, you know, be NFC East champs. So that's the goal, and that's what we're going to work towards.
Joe, you had a lot of restrictions on you when you came in last year financially, you know, with the team. You were putting together a staff. Things are a little more stable now going into this. How much have you been looking forward to this offseason and really getting your hands on this roster and doing it the way you wanted to do it?
Yeah, I didn't want the season to end, I'll tell you that. Right. So, yeah, you know, that was, I think Dave saying a crash landing, that's right. I mean, still driving in this morning, it still hurts. But, yeah, I mean, you just have more flexibility. There were times in season where there were maybe some veteran players that we wanted to sign that would have helped us, and we weren't able to do it. You know, there was that part stinks throughout the season because we could have helped the roster, but just didn't have the flexibility. So, yeah, it's definitely, to have financial flexibility, 9 draft picks, to be able to, you know, devise a plan where you have a little bit more flexibility and resources. I'm definitely more excited. You know, I'm definitely excited about that.
For both of you, picking up on the Philly theme, with the 2 competitive games between the 2 of you, how much did the trenches, how much did the line of scrimmage matter in both of those games, where it certainly seems like Philly has more guys at that level, more of a rotation at those levels to some degree, and just were better, you know, in that part of the game?
Yeah, no, I think you asked that after the game too. They have a good defensive line, a good offensive line. Everything starts up front. You know, we certainly could have done a better job too, but give them credit. They have good players on both sides of the ball. You know, I think we have good players, but they played better and did better than we did.
Joe, how was that dinner with Odell Beckham? And is he a player you're going to revisit going into the spring?
Yeah, the dinner was good. And, I mean, we're going to consider, again, when we have this off-season meeting, every position, who's available, who are the players that are potential that we could sign. And, you know, again, we'll devise the plan from there. But that's kind of where we are right now.
So what's your opinion of this free agent class in general?
The UFA class?
Yeah.
Again, you can look at it today, and it's going to change by the time we get there, because a lot of times the good players that are UFAs end up staying with their team. So we're working through that now. We'll start our free agent meetings next week, devise a plan in terms of the players that maybe we want to target. But there's definitely some players out there that would help us.
You think free agency is more of a tool to build a team than it was maybe 10 years ago, that it's more.
It can be. It can be if you get the right guys and they're durable and, you know, again, because typically when you're signing outside your building, you know, you're paying those guys a little bit of money. You know, if they stay healthy and produce at the level, then yeah, I mean, that's definitely a tool that we used before. Obviously, the draft and develop, and like I was saying earlier, with players in your system already in your building, you know them. Like, you can't really do a lot of research on some players that are with different teams, or you don't know their work ethic or their injury history. So, you know, again, I think when you're making those financial decisions, you have intimate knowledge of the players. I think there's less margin for error, you know, in-house.
Joe, is Julian Love one of the, I know you're not gonna go down the whole list, but he's a guy, culture, you know him, he stayed healthy, he did a lot of different things. Brian has always said some good things about him. Is he a guy you look at and say, yeah, he's part of it?
Yeah, again, we'd like to have a lot of these guys back. It's just, as we go through this and we talk to the representatives, he's a guy, I know he mentioned it yesterday, that we talked to in the bye week, and you know, we weren't able to get something done with Julian, but Julian knows how we feel about him. We had a good exit interview with him yesterday, and again, as we start to, you know, go down the off-season planning, you know, we'll talk to the coaches, we'll see where he fits in, and, you know, if we can get something done, that'll be good.
Paul said, just, sorry, Tom, Sterling Shepard, the role that he could have going forward. I mean, he's been a guy that's been around forever, and Brian, you've talked about the impact that he's had for the team culture.
Good for me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Love Shep. He's awesome. Juice guy all the time. One of my favorites here. So, yeah, just we'll continue to monitor his rehab. You know, coming off the ACL, he had the Achilles before. He's been a tremendous resource around here for us. You know, he's a guy we'll talk about as well, you know, at the end of the week, and continue to communicate with the training staff, Ronnie Barnes and those guys on where he is from that standpoint, when he'll be healthy enough to play. And, again, that's something we may or may not entertain.
Did either of your guys' opinions on Xavier change because of the circumstances of his injury and how that happened? Is he, you know, you saw him as a cornerstone moving forward. Did that change at all?
No, not for us. I mean, he's a young man that made a mistake, and to me, really, initially, it was more, you know, it wasn't about football. It was more about his well-being as a young man. And we've got younger kids. Dave's has some older than me, but we all make mistakes, and we got to learn from it. And, you know, for us, it was just about supporting Xavier through that. And, you know, again, he fought to get back. You know, the football was secondary when we got the call, and, you know, I'm just glad that he was able to play again, and he's a great kid that, you know, we look forward to working with.
Joe, when it comes to free agency, how married are you to what you believe a player is worth and your walkaway number compared to when sometimes you're in negotiations and the market value can, you know, exponentially change how much a player is going to get?
Yeah, no, I think that's something our staff, they do a great job, and we talk about it all the time. Like, what's the walkaway? We come up with a walkaway, and you have to be comfortable because, you know, to use the term I use around the draft, you shop hungry, you overpay, it's a bad deal, and then you get buyer's remorse. So it's important in free agency to come up with the proper value, where you see them as a staff and the value, and where it fits in your salary cap and your team, and then I think it's smart to have a walkaway number.
Joe, do you view Daniel as a quarterback who can help you win a Super Bowl?
We're happy Daniel's going to be here. We're happy he's going to be here. Hopefully we can get something done with his representatives, and that would be the goal, to build a team around him where he could, you know, lead us to win a Super Bowl.
So you're saying he's going to be here next year?
We're going to have these off-season meetings here at the end of the week, and we're going to talk about it, and then with the resources we have, we're going to talk to his representatives and hopefully be able to get something done. To go off the first question.
Joe, you were 22-59 before you got here. The Giants were 22-59 in the 5 years that preceded you guys getting here. Why do you believe this team turned the corner this year?
Whew, that's a good question. A lot of factors. I mean, again, I said at the first press conference, the cupboard wasn't bare. There were some talented players here, really good coaching staff. They did a really good job throughout the season as we continue to, you know, whether it was draft, free agency, waiver wire, improve the roster, our practice squad. And, you know, we were able to create a good culture where the players were able to be themselves, and, you know, the coaching staff, you know, did a good job maximizing the talent of the roster on a weekly basis. So a lot of credit goes to, you know, Dave's and his staff.
Joe, from your vantage point, what do you view as the reason for the injuries in the first half, early season, and have you already commissioned any kind of study or evaluation on how to improve that?
Yeah, we're working through that. Specifically, you know, the rookie class, you know, is it young players coming in, you know, the onboarding process, are we doing that right? We're gonna turn over every leaf to figure that out because, you know, healthy players give us the best chance to win. And, you know, we had some ACLs this year, we had some MCLs, you know, stingers. So we'll do a deep dive in the offseason and, you know, do whatever we can to try to improve that. You know, that way we can be the healthiest we can.
Joe, at what point do you close the book on 2022, or is it something that's fluid in that you're constantly working on last year, building towards the future and that?
It's pretty much closed. Yeah, it's pretty much closed, other than, you know, evaluating the roster off of the 2022 season. But we already kind of know what lies ahead. You know, we talked to our UFAs and everybody yesterday. So now it's, you know, to me, it's, you know, all-star games are coming up. You got East-West games, senior combine meetings, free agency meetings. You know, there's no vacation. You know, we got to keep moving forward and, you know, devise that plan for the offseason.
Joe, do you?
A few more.
Joe, do you, Darryl mentioned Dex, but there's other guys with 1 year left who seem like reasonable extension candidates. Do you simultaneously negotiate with them, or are the UFAs priority because they don't have a year left? If that
Yeah,
makes sense?
UFAs will probably be the priority early on, but we'll also factor those in. Again, we'll look at it holistically, you know, who's under contract for 23, 24, you know, and so on. And again, we're not just planning for the 2023 offseason. You know, we're looking down the line at 24 and 25 as well. What's on the horizon? You know, how will this affect us moving forward? So we're going through a bunch of different scenarios, and we'll continue to do that, you know, again, at the end of the week and throughout the weekend.
This would be for Joe and Dave's. How much further along are you in the process, looking ahead now to the next season, coming off of what you just did, rather than last year? Joe, I think you just got the job 2 days ago, a year ago, and Dave's hadn't been hired yet. Do you think that is an advantage that you can actually move towards 2023 with everything that you have at your disposal, rather than trying to catch up?
Yeah, we talked about the other day. Once we got through the exit interviews yesterday, we've pretty much been through a calendar year, you know, the football calendar year together. So, you know, the coaches' evaluations of UFAs, the coaches' evaluation of our roster, you know, all-star games, we've been through all this stuff. So the process is in place. You know, everybody's here right now has been a part of that. So there's clarity in terms of what we want from our staff, what, you know, Dave's and his staff wants from us. So, yeah, the transition into this offseason will be much smoother.
Joe, we spent a lot of time talking about, are you gonna sign him, are you gonna sign, is there anybody you said, look, you're not coming back?
No, we didn't have those conversations yesterday. Yeah, no, we didn't.
Joe,
It's a good question, though.
That gap that exists between you and the Eagles and the other Super Bowl contenders, given your roster and cap situation, do you think it's possible to close that gap in 1 year, or is it likely to take longer than that?
We're going to try to do the best we can. We're always going to try to get better, you know, roster, players, whatever it may be, resources around here, whatever it is. Anything that we can do that's best interest of the franchise and is going to make us better, we're going to do. Can't put a time frame on that, but, you know, we're going to be relentless in the pursuit of, you know, building a championship team here.
Joe, how much are the stakes different this offseason? Because you came in last year, you basically just cleared the deck. You didn't make any big signings, and you're going to potentially commit to guys, big money, long term. They're going to sort of define your tenure. Like, how do you view that? Is that a big difference?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's, again, the resources that are available are different than last year. I think, again, the advantage of being around the players for a year, you know who they are, you know how they work. And again, yeah, just having more flexibility, it's different from that standpoint. As to, you know, defining my tenure and all, I'm not really worried about that. We're trying to do the best we can with what we have to build a championship team, or, you know, where we can sustain success.
Brian, as a
Last
team,
one.
as a team, what do you feel like you guys specifically need to do to be a better team? Not naming players or anything, but just as a team, what areas do you feel like you need to improve on?
Yeah, that's kind of what Joe talked about. We'll dive into that as a coaching staff here. We'll spend a lot of time on self-scout and process, things we can improve on, whether that's night before meetings, whether that's practice, whether that's situational play calls, techniques, drills. I think that's, you know, you close the chapter on last season, but you need to figure out some of the things that, you know, you need to do a better job of. And there certainly will be probably a significant amount of things that we sit back and say, boy, we could have done this a little bit different or improve on this, and take a deep dive into it, take your time doing it, and then kind of once you get back in April 17th and start going through it, you try to implement those new things or corrections that need to be made or scheduling differences. But again, it's every year is such a new year, at least the 20-plus years I've been in the league. Again, you have half the team is usually different. So you don't just collect talent, you try to build a team. And that's what we talk about all the time. There's certainly players that'll be out there, whether it's free agents, whether it's draft picks, that are talented players, but it's how you put together the team, how the team responds to adversity, how it comes together in the off season, leading up to training camp, the things you do in training camp, all the things that you go through each season. That's what define a team early on the stages, and how you handle a lot of different things. The coaches, the players, the support staff. It's just a new year. Every year is a new year. You wish you could just, like I told the guys when they left, how much I appreciated their work and their commitment to the team. But unfortunately, you're all not going to be here. You wish you could just bottle it up and then bring it back April 17th, and the people in the seats are there, and everybody's kind of worked together, been through some tough times. But that's not the case. So however many new people are here, you got to put them into your system. You got to bring them along. You got to build team chemistry. And every team that I've been part of has been different. Not one team is the same. So that's the beauty about this league, is every year it's a new year for everybody. There's only 4 teams playing. The 4 best teams in the league, they've all earned it. So every team that is, not holding that trophy at the end of the season, it's a stinger. So you got to try to figure out ways to do a better job the next season. But it's such a new year, Bob. It's every year is different, man. Every year I've been part of is different. Been part of a Super Bowl team, and then didn't make the playoffs the next year. So how we build our team and how we build the organization and continue to grow, I think all those things are important. But the team itself, that'll all come together throughout the months of April, May, June, July, August, right into the regular season like this did.